Yo, yo, yo. Hello and welcome to Lenko Show. This is episode number 121, sponsored by Dry Robe. Head over to dryrobe.com to get yourself kitted out for all the winter gear that you're going to need to keep yourself warm and dry post training and post suffering. Today, I'm very pleased to say I have a very special guest coming on, James Jowsey, who I work with at CrossFit 3D. Every time we speak in the gym, we end up talking for ages to the point where none of us end up doing anything. We're always talking training. We're always talking about things that are doing, things that we're doing, things that people are doing that we either like or dislike. And every time I end up saying, I need to get you on the podcast, I need to talk to you about these things so other people can hear it because it's always a great conversation. So that is the objective for today. We're going to get James on and just have a chat, find out what he knows, dig into it, and hopefully you enjoy it as I say, as much as we normally do. So I can see he's waiting in the wings. I'm not going to delay it any longer. Let's get into it. Jowsey, welcome to the podcast, mate. It's good to chat to you.
Cheers, Lenko. Thanks for having me on.
I know I've been speaking to a couple of guys in the gym about this and what's coming up. So I have got a couple of points from them to discuss with you. So undoubtedly they'll be listening. But for the guys who don't necessarily know you, haven't met you, just run through kind of like your background, training experience, coaching experience. Go as far back as you want, and we'll just pull apart a little bits of that as we go and
Yeah,
find what gems we
so
can.
um, sporting history. Football was my main thing, but growing up, I literally did everything. So um, karate once a week, twice a week swimming, played basketball outside in the back garden, and then football. Football was the main love all the time. Then into school, competed on each team. I think we were like represented my county in long jump and triple jump. Sorry, triple jump. I represented the county, represented my district in long jump and triple jump. Um, Represented the England schoolboys at football at under 15s. Signed for Manchester United as a like what would be academy now. So like under 17s, 19s, and then I had like 1 year in the well, a couple of year in the reserves, but yeah, effectively like yeah, 1 year beyond my under 19 contract. So that was kind of sport from there. Obviously, leaving football. Don't really need to go into that long story. Trying to find something basically. I kind of did fall out of love with it. So I stumbled. I'd qualified as a PT, so that was like I knew that would be my career path. Could potentially explain why I failed because I already knew potentially where I wanted to go, so I wasn't focused on being successful technically. Um, so hit that, yeah, PT qualification, got into CrossFit, trained in mixed martial arts for a couple of years, and then eventually, I think I watched one of the lads I played with. He had a goalkeeper. I was a goalkeeper. He had a great kind of performance against Liverpool in the FA Cup, playing for Barnsley, and I was just like, I missed that feeling of making saves. So then got back into football for a bit. Just played semi-professional, but semi-professional, non-paid. It was like a team that had no money, so therefore it was. I literally just turned up, played the games, didn't train, could work because when you work for yourself, you like they can pay you what you want in semi-pro. It's like, but I can still earn more just by working because I'm out of the house for 8 hours on a
Yeah.
Saturday, and you're not paying me for 8 hours. So yeah, it worked really well on that front. Enjoyed it, and then kind of stopped, and then never really, yeah, just yeah. So that was it from a sporting standpoint. In terms of then training people, we just started in the global gym. Like I say, coming from that personal training side, got quickly interested in. I've always been one for technique, and my clients been able to execute technique, but then I found there was a gap in how good I was coaching as to being able to get people to execute. And then I
Yeah.
was like, well, there's got to be something else. Like, I mean, how many cues can I give somebody? It's like, well, there's got to be something else going on. So then I started going down the movement assessment, rehabilitation standpoint, and looked at FMS, check stuff, what else? And then ended up on a seminar with what would be initially faster functional, faster they called. Was initially, so they had like two guys, John Hardy, Phil Mansfield, and like Phil Mansfield became my mentor. So, and that's like the faster principles were driven by like Gary Graham from the States. Um, so really delved into that and spent a lot of time with Phil as my mentor, and then we started a business together, Red Pill Training. And then I left Red Pill Training. Well, I started a sports science degree then, 2000 and so I just finished 2018-19. Started the sports science degree because wanted to just go deeper. And a lot of people said, "Oh, you've got the knowledge of a sports science degree." It's like, but I haven't,
Yeah.
because it depends how deep you want to go on it. And
Yeah.
like, I think as a as an 18-year-old, getting a degree and just getting through it and doing enough to pass versus reading reading all the papers that they've sent you and then reading 20 papers off the back of those papers. I've like taken so much from it. So yeah, so that was kind of like education, kind of like focus pathway. So what happened along that was, because I became this like therapist. I was definitely more of a therapist until the sports science degree, and I had that knowledge of training. But then I was always coming from a therapy angle, which ties well into CrossFit and the athletes that I work with at the levels, because you're trying to make sure that everything works optimally and efficiently, so that the using less energy and or taking the stress away from elbows when they're kipping because the shoulders doesn't work well, or whatever like that. So it got me helped me get really good results. I just then wanted to. I just felt there was stuff missing, and the sports science degree has definitely helped. Well, yeah, 100%. It's the best thing I've done. Like,
Yeah.
I loved everything before it, but I don't regret the pathway. I'm glad I did it this way
Yeah.
rather than the other way. But yeah.
I was going to say, I think if I was to do it, like I know I did my degree pretty much like the other way around, and I think if I was to do it again, I'd definitely have a very different level of appreciation for, I suppose, not only where I was, but also like what I was reading, what I was looking at, what I was trying to understand. Because I suppose by actually working in it, you realize how much you're missing, how many bits of information like
Yeah.
don't quite link up, and you consistently presented with situations where it's like, well, I need to figure out why that's happening. Like I don't fully understand it, so as soon as you're presented with the problem, you then think, right, well, I need to go and fix it, rather than going, right, here's everything, deal with that, and you're like, well, I don't even know what I'm looking at or why I'm looking at it to start with. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of
100%.
puts it into a bit more context for you there. Um,
Yeah. And I think what helped me was like coming from that mentorship side that I'd had. It was that opened you up to all the possibilities, because that's pretty much where you started from. So I was then going into each, diving deeper into biomechanics, diving deeper into physiology, and going, okay, but that ties to that, and that ties to that, and that ties to that, because you know where it's going. Whereas, yeah, generally at that, like I said, well, being the old man in the room with them, like, oh, I don't really like biomechanics, so then they don't try because they don't like it because it's maths and it's this. It's like, no, but you need to know this, because that's going to decide whether you're doing a depth jump or a drop jump, like, and as to why you want to do it, because which is then going to tie into the physiology of it. So
yeah.
it's like there's just so much. Yeah, that's the linking of it all, which is the cool stuff in it.
And I suppose working with CrossFit, like because of I'd say the massively varied nature of the sport itself, anyway, like you're consistently presented with different problems, different situations from your athletes as well, aren't you? Like every single joint, every single muscle, like it's the complexity of it versus I don't know, I suppose where I started with general population who generally have all the problems inherent with just sitting down all day long. And it's kind of,
Yeah.
well, first fix, let's just get you moving on a more regular basis. Like how have you found that? And then I don't know, I suppose are there any common issues you see within the sport itself, or what's been your general thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like how I interpret it or how I approach it is if you could get the lottery numbers, you'd get the lottery numbers, but you can't get the lottery numbers. So what I can't keep just constantly varying. I can't constantly vary the training because I'm never gonna. What's the point in constantly varying it? Because you're never gonna get it right anyway.
Yeah.
So it's very much like I split it out. Having come from sport, I split it out and go like when we played when I was full time in football, we didn't play 90 minutes every single day, 11v11. We split it down into 2v2 shooting games, boxes, possessions, shape of play, set pieces. Like you split the sport out into its components. So I pretty much really break CrossFit down into okay, we're working on weightlifting and we are specifically working on either a skill in a position or we're working on developing more speed or more strength or yeah strength through a particular phase of the pull. Gymnastics work on its own. Okay, are we working on what element of pulling does it need to be? Again, kind of breaking each bit down and going, well, if I can't do them on their own, 100%, I can't do them in a in a
Yeah.
one anyway.
Yeah.
Like, so it doesn't really matter. So, like, if I've not efficiently got the technique when there's zero stress, zero pressure, and my heart rate's high and I'm dying and I'm low on energy, your technique is gone. So if you didn't have it in the first place, it's just worse.
Yeah.
So it's just basically making sure that building that out and going, right, I've got it absolutely nailed. I can do that, and then slowly adding in the elements of interference.
Yeah. I was
Um,
going to say, do you think that's something that within CrossFit gets a little bit lost? Because I think the nature and the culture of it is like there is a WOD, and you will do that no matter what. Whereas to actually get really good at it, you actually need to focus on training a particular skill. And I think a lot of people probably just get carried away with like, I'm just going to go into the gym, do the full on WOD, and that will make me better kind of thing. Do you think that's something that kind of most people get lost in and get pulled into that trap?
I think it's either pulled into the trap or it's is this effectively the psychology of the person that's doing CrossFit that we're dealing with? Like we're dealing with somebody who's potentially more towards ADHD rather than like your meticulous,
I'd certainly agree with that. Yeah.
like versus your bodybuilders or your Olympic weightlifters, like where it's literally like detailed precision, lift off the floor, don't move, like that level of detail. So, and that's where like my athletes have nicknamed my program constantly boring, never varied. Um, like, I do put variation in there, but yeah, it's minimal. Like that's there to tickle the fun and varied piece. I'm like, no, we're doing skill acquisition and that's we're acquiring the skill, we're getting good at it, and then we're going to go into a competition and yeah, execute that way. That's definitely, I think it. That's why. But that being said, about why does that happen? That's that. Then that person. Then we can argue then as a general pop, like so as a competitive piece, like you 100% can't do that. Like you can't just go in, do constantly varied, constantly, yeah, like constantly changing. You can't do that to compete at the highest level. You have to be doing those skill components. General pop, like we could argue and go, well, if if that motivation, the constantly varied keeps the motivation as well as it's part of a community, it's part of a class, it's competitive nature, it's always changing, blah, 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 keeps them training 5 days a week versus doing something else and they go, oh, I'm bored of that now and now I'll stop and don't really train for a bit. Like,
Mm.
so it's it swings around, but it depends on I think it depends on what you're doing and the level you want to.
Yeah. I was going to say I've got two things to come at you with off the back of that. So with respect to the people that are doing the constantly varied, just want to kind of get fit and just do CrossFit because it, because of the method of training they like doing it. I think for those people, some of them I think will kind of get stuck at certain aspects of the skill acquisition and still get caught in that trap. So like for instance, if they want to master muscle ups, but then every time they go into the gym, they're doing a WOD, then they're practicing muscle ups like either afterwards once they're already tired, systems drained, or the kind of not having, like you say, not having the discipline to just spend time and specifically dial in on that skill. And then also just is that something that you think is that a reason that you think Matt Fraser was potentially as successful as he was? Because I think he came from a weightlifting background, didn't he?
Yeah,
And do you think that meticulous approach that he had to his weightlifting then carried over, and he must have brought an element of that into his training for CrossFit in the first place as well?
yeah. So I suppose, yeah, going back to your first question there, or your first statement about the ring muscle ups, like that is something that is like in the. So how long have I been in CrossFit now? So I did my level one in like 2007. Yeah, 2007. I did my level one. So the first one. So I've been in CrossFit now for like,
What, 17
yeah,
years?
17 years. So the biggest one was double unders. It's like everyone wants to get double unders. The problem being was that they do exactly that. They come in and they do double unders every day, and then they end up with Achilles problems. And you're like, you can't do plyometrics every day.
Yeah.
Like, and it's that spike in load, and that's where there's nothing wrong with. I say, in theory, there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with any sport. Like, well, every sport's going to break you down eventually, if we're being honest. But it's all that approach and that spike in training load that kills it, and like not having a double under and then trying to plyometrically explosively jump every day then led to Achilles problems. And the problem being when we go to the skill acquisition piece is you watch people doing it and they don't even have that they don't have that capability to do like a normal pogo hop. So they're effectively doing like mini tuck jumps.
Mm.
So it's like mini tuck jumps and or they were flicking the heels behind. So
Yeah.
they're flicking the heels behind or a mini tuck jump and then slamming the feet down to the floor and getting them off. So it's like you're hitting the floor even harder with your Achilles because you're driving it into the floor because you can't jump or you're falling from even like a higher height because you picked your knees up. So it was like twofold. It was like the increase in spike and the lack of the skill of the simple skill of not being able to do a pogo. And if you can do a pogo, it's like, okay, now you just do a rhythmical pogo with your arms spinning around. Like
Yeah.
that's the break it down. But how many people, oh, no, I need to learn double unders. No, you need to learn pogo. Then you'll be able to do a double under.
Well, I think,
Um,
but I think again, I know I'm kind of interrupting you there, but do you think that's because someone looks at a double under and goes, "Well, that looks really simple. I should be able to do that," and then they start like as soon as you go, "I should be able to do that," you kind of create that false pathway of like it's not actually just as simple as doing a double under. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's like I mean, we mentioned there about loading the Achilles and I'd say necessarily the bounceability of most humans, unless you are athletic it is a lot of work to just go right day one, bang, I'm just going to start bouncing up and down off the floor
100%.
repetitively for a
Yeah.
prolonged period of time. And then I'm going to do not only that, but then I'm going to do it day after day after day without actually allowing myself to recover. It's
Yeah.
like, are you going to go on bench every day?
Try it. It's quite a video program, mate.
Well, yeah. Oh, don't start.
Yeah. How long we last on it, though? That's the question. Like,
Yeah.
that on just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, key center. I mean, that like you said something a couple of times there within it of saying, "Oh, I should be able to do that." Like that's like a common like going. Let's go bigger than training. Like life. Like, oh, I should be able to. Why?
Yeah.
Like, I should be able to do a muscle up now. Why? Oh, I've been training CrossFit for this long. Okay, but why? Like, like how many sessions have you put in? How much of this have you done? How much of that have you done? Like, nobody technically has the right to anything.
Yeah.
I should have been a professional footballer. Why wasn't I? Well,
Do you want to
we
go
can
into
put the
that?
we can put the list on there. I was freaking head case. That was the problem. Uh,
Well, you're a
uh,
goalkeeper. You have to be a head case to be a goalkeeper.
yeah, I mean, but when you're knocking yourself unconscious in training, mate, it's probably not wise. Like, ball must be stopped. Yes. So then you end up with an injury list that was unnecessary, and you're constantly out, and then you miss out on opportunities.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, but as well, in all honesty, like yeah, I know there was a lot of things about that lifestyle that like actually don't suit me as a person. So it's actually like I don't. Would it have been great? Yes, I suppose. Yeah, would it be? But actually, who I am, like it's my mates having like the worst thing from the first 2 years of my contract was great. The last 2 years where the time is ticking, like not knowing is what I didn't like, and sport is it like you don't know in sport, and like
Yeah.
I consistency knowing where everything is, and so it doesn't suit me psychologically, which yeah, as an old man realizing that, could I have done some psychological work as an 18-year-old? But like I say, you go to an 18-year-old and like, what is that even then? And especially like nowadays, it'd be more accepted. But like you're talking over 20 years ago now, like psychology work wasn't. If you went to a psychologist, you were weak
Yeah.
in the head versus an overthinker like me. Like I was, yeah, just breaking. If I made a mistake, I lived with that mistake for half a week, but detrimentally to my own performance. Like, yes, I'd go work on it, but I'd what's the word?
Kind of beat
I
yourself
on
up a
it.
little bit.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
beat yourself up, and then you put stress on yourself, and then you wasn't playing free.
Yeah.
Like as I say, it's that ability to have the mistakes roll off water off a duck's back. Next one, like that one, that's what all the best athletes do. So yeah, that was it anyway. Going back on that tangent,
And then
but yeah, Matt Fraser. Um, yeah, I think because he had, I suppose we could argue. You probably argue that strength or Olympic weightlifting is all the top athletes can do a ring muscle up. Whether they can do 30 unbroken or 20 unbroken, they can do a ring muscle up. If you can't pick the weight up, then you can't do the workout. So he came with the base of being an Olympic weightlifter with the precision, but mostly like with the precision application and the actual technique.
mm,
Because that's the one is like you watch him in any workout and it's so tidy, which is why I'm a like I that is the thing that probably does my athlete's head in is that I apply that same result. It's like no, but you can't pull early. It's like oh, but I got the weight up. It's like yeah, okay, but you work out snatches and ring muscle ups. So if you pull early, if you rely on pulling early in your snatch, and now I've just done 30 ring muscle ups, do you think your snatch is going to be good? Like you're going to ruin your snatch, and then you're like, oh, I couldn't snatch. I'm like, why couldn't I snatch? It's like, well, because we just pre-fatigued your arms. That's the interference. So we
yeah.
have to be here. We have to be efficient here, so that neither cause that interference of fatigue. And that's what he had from that Olympic weightlifting standpoint was he was just so technical, whereas everybody else, like Pat Vellner, he has like those 1 RM numbers. He has them. He's in the big boy section. Just you put that under fatigue, and that's where he breaks down because he doesn't quite have that same technical efficiency of the lifting and the positions. I mean, he's a big fellow with a big wingspan, so there's also that as well. Like to be fair
Mm,
to the fellow,
yeah.
um, but yeah, but it becomes that's where it then tells in those workouts.
Yeah. So I think I mean, my brother has done CrossFit for quite a while and relatively good standard as well. Like he's a great athlete, but he was talking about, I actually spoke to him on the podcast about this yesterday because he's changing his training goal. And he's now going to start doing Ironmans. But he was talking about kind of like leading into his last CrossFit competition, how he was always banged up. He was always beaten up. Like it was either knee, it was shoulder, it was elbow, it was something. And that's probably like, to be honest, I think he knows this as well, but that's probably come to him from a point of kind of always going heavy. It was like, even because I even said to him when he started training for it, it was like 100 kilos on the barbell for a clean, and he's about 3 or 4 weeks into learning how to clean. I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
should we just practice the movement and just get the movement nailed first? And then, like, he's a very, like, he called himself a type 2 baby. Like, he's a very fast twitch athlete. So everything he does is at full speed, and it's like lightning in a bottle. Like, it is max strength, brute effort, where he can kind of force himself through anything and hit the numbers.
yeah,
But is it going to be clean? Is it going to be comfortable? Is it going to be tidy? And then how is it going to tie in to the duration of kind of either a longer workout, a longer competition? And I suppose that's the factor where, if you're not tidy, if you're not efficient, and this goes for people who are starting running as well, right? Like if you're not kind
mm,
of well versed in the technical qualities of being able to run, you're going to break down quicker, you're going to get tired quicker, and that point of I know you mentioned like that point of the spike in training load is going to appear faster. So I think like knowing when to stop, knowing how to load it, knowing how to appropriately manage your volume and master the technique, that's surely got to be one of the fundamental things at the forefront of anyone's mind. Like whenever you start in anything, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%, 100%. I mean, that's yeah, that's that trap that everybody falls into because it's a WOD, and then that's that controlling the intensity. But then it's always intense. So it's like, so you've effectively done like, let's take CrossFit out of the equation and just say I'm an Ironman and I'm going to get you to do lactate intervals every day, or
enjoy.
or high speed intervals. Like you're either going to do high speed intervals or you're going to do long sustained threshold. So it's like, so either way, you're producing high levels of lactate every single day, which is a one way ticket. Like
Yeah,
that's even to the endurance athletes, they like that's where the worst zone for them is that between aerobic and anaerobic transition. Like they do too much volume in there where they can sustain a high output for a long period of time, and that's what spikes. That's what drops their injury rate goes up, fatigue levels, and yeah, but that's CrossFit every day.
yeah. I mean, we are like kind of a common theme so far has been kind of just doing the sport as being like the best element of training, practice, and conditioning. I know I've seen online, and I know this will tie in some of the stuff we'll talk about later, but I've seen online now quite a few coaches, one in particular, massive fucking following. I'm not going to name the person, but preaches consistently that the best method of conditioning is just play sport, just play sport, just play sport, just play sport. And then there was a post last week where it's like he's done a meme of someone putting Tabasco in their eye, and it's like athletes who only play their sport for their conditioning. And I'm like, you fucking hypocrite, you absolute arsehole. And I just think, yes, playing your sport is a massive part of it, and it should make up the foundation. And we were talking about this in the gym yesterday, where like that should make up the foundation of everything you do. But then the role of the strength coach is to give you the bits that you're missing out on. And even though you are playing your sport, like you were saying before, you don't just play nine-a-side football. Sorry, not nine-a-side, 90 minutes, 11-a-side every
Yeah,
single day you go into training. You break it up into smaller games. You challenge yourself with different problems. Same thing with, I suppose, training for an Ironman, training for a marathon. You don't go and run a marathon every day. Break it up into smaller intervals, work different energy systems, and you target things in a slightly different manner. What's your just go to town on your thoughts on people that say just do this, just do that, only do this, just play your sport.
I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? Like, and this is just the general industry problem, um, because this is all just for likes. That's effectively it. It's an opinion to be people putting it out there to either cause controversy or just create an idea that makes them different rather than actually just going, no, you need to know all of it strictly. Like social media isn't for people that coaches that want to know the whole picture. Is for people that have an opinion about something, and that's kind of like where effectively like that was my I was becoming programmed as a more like mobility biomechanics kind of guy, and I was like, I don't want to be. I want to be a coach.
Yeah.
Like you know it all. Like I don't want to just be pigeonholed into this one thing because it's that ability to. The problem is you're just looking at everything through the same lens. And I say it's like no, it's what was it like? Yeah, you can't treat your plumber doesn't come around to your house just with a hammer. He can't treat everything with a hammer. Like, and that's all that social media is promoting these people with. Like, they've got one hammer and that's it. And people go, oh yeah, that's great. Oh, it sounds amazing. Blah 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 blah. And then, yeah, they get a bum following, and yeah, that's the issue. That's the fight that. Well, it's a fight we don't really take up because we're too busy trying to actually be good,
Yeah.
which takes time. Like we sit there and yeah, spend your whole life trying to argue against those guys versus just going out and improving. And then does anything change? Yeah, I suppose it depends how you motivate, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
uh, that's it, really. I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say
Yeah,
so. Because I was like, I mean, I got asked a little while back, and it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on this, but someone was like, right, what's your training philosophy? And I was like, what would your initial reaction to that question be? What is your training philosophy? And then I'll
yeah,
tell
I
you
think
what, and then I'll tell you what I said.
yeah, I think like from where I've come from what I've been, like that's still the thread. The thread of my training is 100%. Whatever you want to call it. I mean, I suppose you call it skill, like it's skill acquisition.
Yeah.
Like you call it like skill acquisition, motor learning is the foundation of going, well, can you execute that movement? But it's like every technique is like, okay, is that like I was in the gym yesterday, just in a global gym, and mate, like a couple were training in front of me, and they were doing good mornings, and like he was doing the good, like sorry, doing RDL, and he was doing RDL all right, and she was doing an RDL with a back like this. Like obviously he's not a coach; they're just training together. But they're looking at it going, and she's there grabbing her back after a little bit, and you're like, well, yeah, of course your back's hurting. Like you're ready. And I just told you, you're getting absolutely no help from your pelvis whatsoever. You're getting nothing from your hamstring, nothing from your glutes. You're literally just bending forward through your erectors. Of course, they're tired. Like they're the only thing working for you, and it's just going. Well, how do I take that into then the sport? So it's like it's all grounded on if we're hitting those things um, in the gym, and then what's that? Then layering on those pieces of okay, yeah, well you are stronger than you are fast, or you are faster than you are strong. Yeah, and layer, yeah, try and layer up on as much as you want. Like you're like your brother,
Mm,
super explosive. Ask him to do a 20-minute C2 bike test, and he's absolute toast. So it's like, so your training needs to be, it's like, yes, here's your strength, but here's your weakness, and the
mm,
weakness is gonna, I'm not going to spend, depending on the sport, spend loads of time there, but enough to bolster up the other qualities because we can't just, if that's, as we talked about yesterday, if you are highly tendinous, highly explosive, highly elastic, is it any surprise that you go down with tendonitis? It's not the person that goes down with stress is the person that does the most hours. So the tendons are complaining. So do we still need to do tendon loading protocols to help with the realigning of of the tendon and the remodeling of the tendon. Yeah, we do, but you've not got a problem with your tendon. You've
Yeah.
got you've got a problem with your tendon, but your tendon has been caused by an underlying factor of you ain't getting into the muscle belly and using that or recovering, or you've got nothing else to fall back on.
Mm.
So that would be the philosophy we go in. Again, that comes down to, well, how do you execute whatever that sport may be? So it all comes down to that first GPP phase, effectively.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a question that I didn't really know what to do with the question at first because I was like, well, what do you mean? I don't have one specific right. Whoever comes through the door, whoever I'm working with, this is the pathway 100%. Like for
Yeah,
me, that's
yeah,
not how it works. It's like, well, who are you? What's your training history? What have you done before? Like there are so many components to it that I don't think I've got it through my mind yet as to like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do every single time.
oh,
Like I
yeah,
don't think it works. So like I think the answer that I gave was just like it varies. It 100% varies with every single person. It's like people like obviously you get cookie cutter programs, and I've got
yeah.
programs available for athletes that are very general adaptation. Like if you do this, you will get stronger. If you do this, you will get a little bit quicker. But if you want to really delve into the intricacies, like it takes a bit of time, and there's a lot of twists and turns off the back of that. Want to go through like what we touched on yesterday, where we were talking about the role of the strength coach and how important is it that athletes get through their head that yes, you want to be better at like a particular sport, like football, for example. But what I want you to deal with in the gym is here's what you're going to do to get a little bit stronger to try and enhance some of the qualities with that, or kind of giving them the stimulus that they're not getting in their sports. Like one of the instances I can think of that comes to mind immediately is that Joe DeFranco did a load of testing on quite a few of his NFL players, like worked with a lot of linemen, and basically, although they were incredibly fast, incredibly explosive, incredibly powerful, and he did do the vast majority of his training working on those aspects, it was like your VO2 max is in the toilet. So
Mm,
as a general healthy human, we're not in a good position. Could we then bring your VO2 max up to then enhance your recovery between reps on the field, improve your durability, and improve your overall performance output on the field? Like, how do you kind of dress that up as we're going to give you what you're not getting in your training on the field to
mm.
it's what you're going to do in the gym?
How do you dress it up?
Hmm. How you dress it
Yeah,
up, like how you kind of sell it to them, how you, yeah, and then I suppose
yeah.
generally
I
the
mean,
role
I
of the
suppose
coach.
the thing for me is that I'm in a lucky place where they need as many of the qualities as possible anyway. So I'm not in that individual environment where you're trying to tell them to do something. Like the footballers that I work with, you work with I work with a range. You got the super dedicated who'll do anything, and then you got the ones who they're just that skillful athlete that they just want to play the sport. Like they
Yeah.
don't like it's not. I love football. Like I'll do it. Yeah, I can see how it helped me, but I'd rather just do football, which is why like a lot of these. I know there's a bit of an issue in football at the moment where people are getting the external skill coaches to do extra skill work, and those guys are doing like it's all on pitch stuff, like short XLs, decels, like smashing them into the ground in like these shooting drills. Like effectively, yeah, just everything just to look flashy for Instagram, effectively. And so that's what's all on there. But it's like, okay, but is that skill coach quantifying anything that they're doing within that session? It's skill, yes, but their heart rate's going to be higher. Like, have you done set rests? How many sets have you done? Like, do you know how many XLs or decels you even did that morning as to why you've done your session like that? And then we wonder why like I said, that's that whole piece of, but they want to do that because it looks like, oh yeah, well I'm getting fit in my sport and I'm able to shoot under fatigue. Has like, can we justification wise, can we argue it? There's like, yeah, shooting under high skill under fatigue, like the CrossFit, if we want to package it up. But yeah, but now you've just spiked the training load massively again. Whereas, yeah, being in the gym, going, okay, I need you to do, yeah, your VO2 max is low, or yeah, you just need to sit on the bike, and we're just gonna do some low zone two stuff and nudge it from the bottom up. Because that's what I'd probably do if it was football. I'd
Mm.
probably go because they all do high intensity intervals anyway. It's all based off XLD cell. I'd definitely go low level, low conditioning to keep the impacts low to build that base of recovery without spiking everything because that's what they're always doing.
Yeah, high speed running's probably one of the biggest metrics that they're looking at the minute, and it you just see everyone doing box runs and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like I mean that's where all their data injury tracking is around. Like they see those spikes in high speed running, and that's where the injuries like occur. But then that's becoming the whole maintenance program. So the guys that go in on that don't play on the Saturday then have to do the runs at the end of the game. But they're more worried about them getting the high speeds. And it's like, yeah, you've done the high speed distance, but they've just missed out on what is it? Football's like 40 to what's the stat now? Is it 40 or 60? Like, is it somewhere between 40 and 60% of a football game is
yeah,
it walking or jogging?
yeah,
So you've missed out on so well, let's say 50%. You've missed out on 45 minutes of zone two work.
mm,
So doing 20 sprints, yeah, you touch that, but you've also missed out on your zone two capacity. Um, so you ain't. And yes, I know. Obviously, there's enough research to show that VO2 max increases with doing high intensity intervals. But again, when we do a high intensity interval, this is kind of that whole, well, this is the fun in our game, right? And that I'm going, okay, well, I can do high intensity intervals, which also increase VO2 max and also, well, yeah, whatever else it does. So technical. Um, but that trade off of yes, that does that. However, it's at higher speed, which is therefore a higher forces going through the body, which is more eccentric breakdown, which is overload more stress. So you've gone, yes, you've done that, but you've also spiked fatigue as well. So if you're doing that as your only method of conditioning, then you're also doing it in a high stress environment, full stop. Like from sort of not just looking heart and lungs and delivery now, but also forces. And then we go, yeah, yeah, they're the considerations all the time, aren't they?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going
yeah.
to try doing this wrong.
That's the whole thing. It's just that game of like you can't work on everything, but it's which bits are you working on, why you're working on it, and I suppose you're constantly spinning plates, aren't you? You're trying to get the best return for your efforts, and especially when players are in season, you're trying to do the least interfering kind of training that you possibly can, so that they can still perform, still be ready on match days, and still kind of like I remember reading I think it was one of Tim Grover's books where he's talking about like working with Michael Jordan, and he's talking about, you know, he'd be in the gym and he'd be lifting or he'd be training power, like because of I mean, we were speaking about basketball yesterday and the frequency of which they actually play games, and it's like, well, you know, if you don't train the day before the game or on the morning of the game, when are you actually going to get stronger? Because I think that
Mm.
that was a big thing for him. Like obviously he's getting loads of plyometric work running and jumping in his actual game time, but then he'd go into the gym on the morning of a game or the day of a game and he'd do a strength session. Like wouldn't necessarily be a really long one, but it would be a very intense, high effort session where it's like, well, if I don't do it now, when else am I going to do it? And if
Yeah,
like I mean, I got to the situation where quite a few of my footballers, I was like, they'd never do anything the day before a game.
yeah,
Like they just kind of sit around, lays about, feet up, and I was like, let's get moving. Let's do a short power session and get in the habit of that. Because otherwise, when is it going to happen? I know we were speaking about Patrick Mahomes last week. We
Yeah.
were talking about some of the things that his coach is doing, and he's like, the closer we get towards game day, the faster we're going to move. And generally just to get the CNS fired up, and like I always say, it's like when you go to a spa and you're chilling out having a spa day. When you come out of the spa weekend or whatever you've been doing, you feel super groggy, or like you just if you have like a day in bed or whatever, like you feel even more tired at the end of it. Like, what's your recommendations for people for loading up either into competitions or into games?
Sorry, mate, I'm having a coughing fit whilst you're
I thought you were having a
there.
brief death there.
Um,
Yeah, loading into competitions or games. Like, what's your general thoughts or advice on any of that?
well, I mean, that's. I mean, I'm within CrossFit. Oh, sorry, CrossFit or sport.
All of it, any of it, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all of it. Like, you 100% have to be doing something. Like, and it's not that whole argument on. I mean, when people talk about a rest day, is that right? So if I train at 8 a.m. today and I finish at 9 a.m., and then that's my last session of a Wednesday. Like Thursday, I'm going to do a light day. I'm not going to have a day off. I'm just going to do a light day, but I don't train till 9 a.m. I've had a day off. It's 24 hours since the last stimulus. Whereas if you have a complete day of rest, that's not 24 hours.
Hmm.
That's 36, 48. Like that's 2 days off.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right of like, if we take the elements of other, take the elements of strength training or Olympic weightlifting, they need to, yeah, do they want to come down and freshen their nervous system up? Yes. But if we just look at the numbers and go, their baseline, they could go in and hit, what's their baseline value that they could go in and hit and it wouldn't cause any fatigue? Is it 70%? Is it
Hmm.
80%? They can go in the day before and hit an 80% lift. That'll prime them. That doesn't fatigue them because it's within their capabilities. That's effectively what we're talking about is going, well, if it's within your capabilities and you're not overstressing yourself, then you are recovering. But you're just keeping you're primed.
Hmm.
Like, yes, I'm still fast. I'm still feeling strong. So it's 100% that that piece of doing it is just going. It just needs to be within. Like you're not trying to max out your strength. Like if we go into like the whole joy is about concurrent training research and going, oh yeah, well there's an interference effect on strength if you do too much cardiovascular stuff. And it all was initially born about from study by Hickson, and it was a 12-week protocol, but strength and aerobic capacity VO2 max increased up to 8 weeks. There was only a drop off in strength beyond weeks 9 to 12. However, there was they were doing 5 times a week aerobic, 5 times a week strength training, and the intensity of the CV at the same time as the weightlifting was going up. So it was only as they got even fitter and the stress went up that then we saw a drop off in performance.
Hmm.
So it's just taking, like as you said, that Patrick Rose, that speed day the day before. Speed is light. Well, all right, is it? Because the ground reaction force.
Yeah.
But if we're just in a gym and we're just throwing a ball,
Yeah. There's no external load.
there's no external load. If
Yeah.
we're doing a box jump for speed and we're going to land high on a box, so we're not even getting that impact, like going in and doing seated box jumps and tall landing box jumps where you're meeting the floor at a higher point and you're therefore not getting the ground reaction force. Like, yeah, of course you can do that. Why
Yeah.
why why would you not? I suppose.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that ties into it's like I think both our approaches to training are very kind of simple, straightforward. Like there's no kind of showboating, I would say, like you see on social media, and we said like a lot of it is to just get clicks, get likes, get attention, eyes on, which is all very, very good. But when it comes to actually training people and getting results with athletes,
Yeah.
not necessarily the best approach. What's some of the worst, any particularly bad examples that come to mind on social media from stuff that you've seen, or do you generally just kind of stay away from it?
The thing is, mate, like on the simple stuff, like if you reflect on me 3 years ago, you probably say, "What is that guy doing?" Because of like the Gary Gray stuff, like where you're doing a lunge and you're swinging your arms everywhere and everything like that. Like, so that would have been the attention stuff if I was the guy that was on social media, like actively promoting that. Like, and the reason I was doing it was because of what I'd, like if you went into detail of what I thought about, like now I go, now I've changed my idea. I'm potentially going for the same principle, just with a more simple method that also ticks more boxes. So I suppose I've been there myself, but yeah, it's. I mean, there is a guy that's getting a lot of attention. Are we going to name him or?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so Joel Speedman. Um, like it is 100% for like it's just to look to catch attention because if we were to go, oh, here's how you coach a squat properly. Here's how you coach a split squat properly. So, I know how to do a split squat. It's like, no, but do you? Like when you actually ask people to, that's what I spend a lot of time doing. It's like, okay, what are you doing whilst you're squatting? Oh, I'm just doing this. Okay, so what are you thinking about here and what are you thinking about there? Like where you're pressing from, where you're not, and like they're actually just they're making the shapes, but they're not necessarily getting the most from the exercise. But if that was on social media, everyone would be like, oh, it's just a squat, isn't it? Whereas, yeah, your man with bands for bands, and everything swinging from.
I mean, did you see the I don't know if you might have seen it or not. The video I did a video a few weeks back of me setting up one of his exercises.
How long did it take you?
I did it in 3D. Bear in mind the gym was closed. There was nobody in there. I know where all the equipment is. It took me like not even joking. I think it was at least 4 minutes. Could have been five.
Yeah.
I needed two benches, a trap bar, a seated row handle. It was the one where he's doing it's almost like a deficit trap bar deadlift with a seated row handle. And I was like, this is just
Oh yeah.
ridiculous. Imagine
Yeah.
doing that in a busy
Yeah.
gym.
Well, you
And
won't be able to have all that equipment anyway.
no, I mean, like going up trying to grab a bench in peak times is tough on its own, let alone going, oh, can I just have those two benches? Yeah, what do you need them for? I'm going to stand on them. Like, get out.
Oh yeah, it's just whereas like effectively what you're doing is like why don't you just grab a plate and why don't you just do a snatch grip deadlift?
Well, do you know what I actually did in the I did an alternative exercise.
You
I
go
just
for
all I did, I put the handle from the seated row on the belt squat.
it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Because so the thing was, like, I actually thought, do you know what? I'm gonna go with it. I'll try it. I'll see how it feels, and then I'll judge it. And I actually really, really liked the feel of the exercise and what I felt like I was getting from it. I could see merit to it, but the way it was
Yeah.
being executed was just batshit mental, not going to happen on a regular basis. So I thought, oh, I'll just find an easier way to do it. Handle on a belt squat. I suppose you could arguably do the same thing with like a cable stack if you fix the cable to the bottom and then just stand on a couple of plates to elevate yourself to get that deficit aspect. But actually turned out to be a really good exercise because I like the grip position, really, really strong position. You could add tons of weight to it.
Yeah.
Um, Work quite well, but yeah, the overall method in the madness to get eyeballs on, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, have you seen the one where, 'cause obviously, I don't understand how, but he seems to manage to work with loads of NFL players. Have you seen the one where he's bouncing a Swiss ball off their heads while they're doing
Oh yeah,
various
perfect.
exercises?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they don't take enough impacts during the week anyway. No, they definitely struggle with that. Like, I mean, that's just the yeah. This is specific. It's,
I imagine like Tua, the Miami quarterback, he like has a couple of really bad concussions. I imagine he'll go and see Joel, and Joel will probably be like, "Yeah, you've had quite a few concussions. What we need to do is just get your neck trained and get you braced for the impact. So what I'm going to do is just bounce this ball off your head consistently." Like, come on.
I think the part of the, I mean, whether this is part of it is like how does he end up with the NFL players, or how do they get there? And the problem, like social media, is effectively an education platform. So I mean, obviously don't know what goes on in the like within those clubs, but how much time have the staff got to educate the players as to why they're actually doing it?
Hmm.
Like it's so intensive. Like Will, my mate that works at City, like they are just back to back. Like it's chaos. Like so, there's no time for like in on onto the next thing, metrics, blah blah blah, blah. Just moving through. So there's potentially not time for that education piece for the athletes. Are like, look, I know that this, like him saying, like that person on social media going, oh yeah, well this is functional for sport because you've got this. And you go, okay, that's great. I agree. So like you're like him, like with some of his exercise. So the track bar stuff. Some of it I actually like is going. So where he stands in the track bar the opposite way, and you've got the weight going that way. I look at it and go, right, okay, could you? I've not tried it. We should like if we just front loaded one end. I mean, he's probably done a video on it. If we front load one end or front load the back end, like, is that the same as say you don't have access to a camera bar squat, or like all your different squat members are going, well, I can offset the weight so I can encourage more torque either posteriorly or anteriorly, depending on where the weight is. So we can change that moment arm and then get greater stress if you wanting to work on a specific muscle group. Like, so I see some utility in it. But like I say, it'd be for a specific reason of that. But you turn around and go, oh yeah, because I want more on the hamstrings. Like, okay, but so then we could then just argue, go, okay, what do you want on the hamstrings? Because why don't you just do a ISO long lever, ISO hamstring, or an eccentric hamstring, or whatever it may be. So yeah, like I said, there could be utility, but then you'd be ticking that box. But then you go, but is that maximal load to the hamstring? No, so I'd choose that. So I'd always come to that exercise versus yours. Oh, I want maximal force. Okay, yeah. Well, you want maximal force, just make it more simple then, and then you'll have maximal force. Like,
What, what's your take on his eccentric isometric methodology? Because I think that's like when we talk about, I don't know, I think like again, both of our training approaches allow us to kind of go anywhere, where I think he's kind of pigeonholed himself as like eccentric isometrics are going to be a thing. I'm fairly sure he's just kind of invented them because it sounds good, and it's like it doesn't make sense because if you're doing an eccentric isometric, like let's say if we're going to do an eccentric isometric squat, I'm then assuming you're never getting up again.
well, yeah. I mean, I don't understand what it means. Hello, one night. So you're not lengthening then, right? Or
No,
what is it?
no.
Or is
So
it
it's.
metric?
I mean, the like it's basically it's a tempo rep. It's like, right, what I'm going to do is put an emphasis on the lowering. So let's go 3 to 5 seconds on the way down. Then in the bottom of the rep, which obviously he doesn't go below 90 degrees because that would be very damaging. You can delve into that one in a little bit if you want. Doesn't go below 90 degrees. And then in that position, which I am actually quite a fan of this, but when you do the isometrics, it's a co-contraction. It's like you're essentially engaging everything, squeezing as much muscle as you possibly can, holding that position, and then you're going to push and drive out of that position. So that's his eccentric isometric.
Yeah. So it's, as you said before, it's just tempo then.
but
Just a
you've
long pause.
but it's got a but it's
Slow
got
a long pause, and then it's got a concentric. So effectively, what we want, the idea being that we're either going to overload the eccentric or we're going to resist a weight that is hard to resist because you want to be near that top end because concentric is concentric is the first thing we lose, the inability to lift that weight up. But eccentric will stay, isometric will still be we can still try and do it, but we're going to do all three of them.
Mm.
So effectively, you're not maximally overloaded eccentric and you're not maximally isometrically contracted because the weight's not hard enough. So you either want to just do an overcoming isometric.
But then I think so. So one of the big things that he preaches is that his exercises are super joint friendly, and that since he started training that way, all his injury issues have gone away. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're not lifting heavy enough to, again, like that. We talk about the spike in stimulus, and again, he ran a sprint program. He was like, right, I'm going to sprint every day for 6 months or whatever it was, and he was like, I won't get injured because of the way I train. That was kind of how it was being sold. Like my training is magic, so I won't get injured when I sprint every day. And then when you turn around and you actually look and analyze the sprinting, it's like, well, you're not actually running fast enough to be able to do yourself any damage in the first place. It'd be like the same as me just going for a jog every day. I'm not necessarily going to get injured because the forces in it aren't high enough.
Oh,
Well,
what was he sprinting? So he wasn't sprinting.
oh no, like I think he did a podcast where is it strength coach Kia, the guy who's very much rugby oriented as an S&C coach, very very good coach, and he was basically breaking it down and being like completely bastardized his technique, completely laid into that. But then he was like, if we look at the speeds that you're traveling at and the forces that you're putting in, you're hitting like was it like 7.5, 8 meters per second, something like that maybe. It was
Yeah,
like it's nowhere near fast enough for you to be able to do any damage to yourself. So it's like sub maximal effort running really.
yeah,
Um, but I know what it's like
yeah.
with, yeah, I mean, so what you're saying really is you could, if you wanted to really make the most of it, you'd then go, well, do we start using chains? Do we start using bands to add more to the eccentric component without overloading the isometric component? Like if we can take load off at the bottom, that would
I
be,
mean, bands are something I don't quite understand. I don't and I mean, I don't understand why we use a band. Like, I do and I don't, because it's like, again, it's just that simplicity side of it of going, okay, so the band's accelerating you in. So you're accelerating on the way down and slowing down on the way up. But so then you maximally force producing on the way up against a resistance that's gradually increasing. But technically, during actual motion, when you're at those angles, like there'll have been enough force produced so that that muscle wouldn't need to keep contracting there. So it's pretty much how much you could have created at the bottom that's the most important. Or well, sorry, is how much you created earlier to even get that triple extension.
yeah,
Versus trying to increase the time, increase the time that you're lifting it for. So then I just split it down and go, well, if I'm wanting to increase the acceleration into, then surely you just jump off a box,
go faster.
go faster. So if you want to increase the acceleration in, do something that makes you go faster. And
Yeah.
if you wanting to slow the weight down, lift. Well, yeah, you're going with increasing resistance throughout that. And I suppose it's just they're saying, yeah, you're just getting harder work at the top, but it's that element of okay, but is that where the hardest part of the squat is the bottom?
Mm.
You've done the hard work. So was it the fact that you didn't create at that hard work? You created enough force to accelerate the bar to get out of there, but then that was it. So there was no acceleration beyond that. So it's not that you need to get stronger in the top range. It needs that you need to be able to produce more at that length tension later on. I don't know. Like
Mm.
that's
I
where
mean,
it's
I think I
from
was
resist.
coming at,
Oh, sorry, you just got isometrics.
yeah,
Sorry, so I said, yeah, get faster, jump off something, deal with speed, wanting to overcome something. So just do isometrics at different angles, and then
yeah,
you've not even got the weight through the body.
yeah. I was going to say more from the viewpoint of trying to make some of Joel's stuff somewhat useful. If if you were to kind of overload that eccentric component, so if you did have, like, if you were doing, like, say, a barbell squat and you got a couple of bands where it, pulling the way down from the top, the most resistance is at the top, and then you consistent, like, let's say if that was, it would probably have to be incredibly close, if not over 1 RM in terms of total load. But if you were to have to work incredibly hard at decelerating that to the point where you then go into the position to hold the isometric, it would be useful and still just about manageable. But then you'd probably have to just bin the bar off your back and then say, like, so yeah, so let's say, like, what would your thoughts be on this? If we did a banded barbell back squat where it's eccentrically massively overloaded, like either super maximal above your 1 RM, you're resisting that all the way down to the point where at the bottom you're
With
able to
and
hold. We'll go, well, either with or without.
yeah,
Was the same kind of principle, but like you're maximally overloading that eccentric component, resist that all the way down, pause and hold that isometric at the bottom, bin it, and then just jump.
yeah. I mean, that's which one is it? Is that extenuated eccentrics? Is that what it's called?
Uh,
Or 2 seconds, mate. I'll get that
yeah, I
one in a
think
second.
so. Quite possibly, yeah. I know I've been playing around at the minute with quite a few overcoming isometrics. I do quite like that as a, in terms of, we mentioned about isometrics holding those positions, and you can work at more specific joint angles. I quite enjoy doing that kind of training as well.
Well, yeah, great thing with the isometrics, isn't it? It's like, well, there is no muscle damage.
Yeah.
You haven't got
Oh,
the
that was
repetition.
the other thing I meant to kind of pull you on as well. Like in terms of, so when people are prepping for comp and match days and things like that, the volume is the thing that kills you, isn't it? And that total number of reps that they're doing, the amount of muscle damage that they're accruing. Wrong way to go.
Say that question again. Sorry.
High amounts of repetitions in a deload. Would you do it?
Trying to think with the CrossFitters. There's always one that it suits better
Mm.
in CrossFit, but it's a different
Yeah,
sport, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
the
yeah,
thing is, there's not the classical, as it whereas most people do deloads based off. You problem is you've got two things. You've got how a runner would deload, an endurance runner would deload, but then the volume is still higher than what a power strength athlete would be. So technically, either way, you're not doing the typical deload of the Olympic weightlift, like the Olympic weightlift, the strength athlete, but then you're not doing the absolute volume that they're doing, but it's less than the endurance, but yeah. So you're just kind of stuck in the middle. So I suppose it depends. It's finding the sweet spot.
yeah,
Finding the sweet spot. Like I'm programming a weightlifter at the moment. She feels better at the back end of the week. Like once she's accumulated all the work through the front end is where she starts to feel like she's more explosive. Like it's yeah, it's just interesting. Like just the opposite of what we're effectively told. So
yeah.
like she's weaker in the squat anyway, so I'm putting the squat first. And then we're doing the lifting last, which you technically do because she's like just messaged me and was just like it's like I always feel better by the third set. Like she takes the time to get into it.
Mm.
So I'm like, well, why don't we get all the squat volume done and then finish with the ollie. So it's not how the textbook says, but it's like, but by this point everything's fired up, and then she feels good while she's lifted, even though there's fatigue, but she feels better.
Yeah.
So, oh man, again, this is fun stuff, isn't it?
It's
Like,
individual difference, isn't it? I suppose it always comes down to like treat and train the person in front of you.
no, that's what. But you've got to go. We've got to go with the. I suppose globally, we go with the. You've got to go with the science and what the majority does, but then just appreciate and go when someone comes to you and says, "I don't feel good doing that," being able to go, "Oh well, the science says this." Okay, science does say that, but science is never. It's not one. It's like yes, 100% of the time, like it's not. It's not that. It's like for the majority, this is the right decision.
Mm. And it's
There
all,
will be the outliers.
I suppose it's always playing catch up as well, isn't it? I suppose there is
Yeah,
a little bit of forethought going into it, but it's generally always playing catch up. And on that vein, is there anything that I know you mentioned like your method of training, so like from 3 years ago to now is very, very different.
yeah.
How has that changed? Why did it change? And what sort of stuff are you playing around with now that you kind of experimenting with and doing with your athletes typically?
I think it changed because um, things that like learning things on the degree started to make more sense, like learning the biomechanics from a math standpoint of okay, well, what are you trying to manipulate within? Are you trying to manipulate power or force or um, yeah, over what time or impulse, like time into all that. So that changed it all. Then that piece of it was a very because it was skill acquisition based. It was high volume, like to learn a skill. Um, but then coming from a basis of, I think, I don't know, just reflecting on like the thing is like I got good results with it. Um, it's more just the fact of the amount of work that people also needed to do. So then it was that overload, and it's like okay, my athletes will they move really well, they don't break down in competitions, but then we'd always be missing out on like the strength would always just like the kind of the premise of it was like or is like well if you've got a hip that functions properly, like if you can't access your posterior hip properly to get the glute and hamstring working while squatting, then you're going to squat less. So if we improve the function of your hip and you've got all of those muscles working, then you'll squat more. And 100% saw results from it. The difference was is there was then no adaptation. It was like just falling back on that of oh we just train the skill to get that and we just make them more skillful. It's like yeah, but you're not overloading them now.
Mm.
So there's no overload. The only overload is the volume of overload, but there's therefore not enough force production. So they're not getting, they got stronger initially, but then they didn't get stronger at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it was more that, and then going, also just thinking, I think effectively like what, what I thought, sometimes what I thought I was doing wasn't necessarily like, here's an example. So this is the best way to describe it with. So the weightlifter, she came to me with prolapse discs in her back. So she can overhead squat, but she can't back squat. So I put the overhead squat in her so we start with the overhead squat in the program because she can still learn to squat. And the overhead squat asks her, she's got a weak core, and the overhead squat puts more demand on the core than the back squat does. So when the core is under demand and has more activity in it, she has less back pain. But the moment arm and the stress on the back doing a back squat goes through L5, L4, S1. which is where her prolapsed discs was. So
Mm.
is the pain? So is the pain because is the overhead squat making her better because the abdominals came in, or because the moment arm wasn't through the point of the injury? And I don't know. Like I don't know which one it is. It's just, and that's kind of like I think where I got to with it was, am I making people better? Like why am I making people better if I need to? So the frontal plane at the hip, we do loads of stuff with making sure the hips can move in the frontal plane or rotationally. But ultimately, what's my task? Like, if they're traveling in a straight line, they're a straight line runner. I don't want frontal plane motion. Like, if the hips are doing this, if they're either going up and down here too much and they're not staying still, or they're going side to side here, then that's a movement pattern I don't want,
Mm.
because I actually just want it to be still and solid. So me going, oh, I'm going to train them in the frontal plane because they're missing the frontal plane. It's not making them better at the sport. It might reduce the pain because you're giving them. If we go into the pain science and then go, we've given them another option around the pain. So the pain is based off movement, and you've found a way around it. But you've not
Yeah.
necessarily then you've taken the pain away, but you've not made them better at the sport. You've
Yeah.
100%. They are they are, and that's where it is. I am like coaching has, yeah, I think I'm always led towards the performance side. I love working with Gen Pop. I do view it all as performance,
Yeah.
of like ability to perform better as an old person or as a dad, of like being able to exceed whatever that is. Everyone is a performance. Everyone has a level and demand of performance. I love working with athletes because the decisions are harder and take much more thought, like more challenging. Like it's
Yeah.
quite simple. Yeah, which is why you can give low level core work to most people and the back pain will go away. Like you can't give that same low level core work to an athlete that has to deal with a 100 kilo snatch, choose your numbers, heavy back squats, blah 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 blah. Like those same exercises might be there in the early stage, but your rehab has to be way more intense than what the sport is, and that's kind of where I was definitely missing out on the court. Like, yes, I was giving them movement coordination, and I've given them more movement. Like, you want to call it movement literacy? I suppose I'd call it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was giving them more
Yeah.
literacy, but was the glute physically stronger? Was the quad physically stronger and able to produce more force? Yes or no?
Mm.
This was a very, very long answer there, mate.
No, I appreciate it. Like, what do you think, just out of curiosity, what do you think your approach will be with that weightlifter with regards to like, is the back squat something you're still going to work towards? Is it something you're going to bother with? Because I know, like, I think it's probably always got its uses, but it's
Yeah,
not a specific aspect
as a
of the
front
skill of
squat.
weightlifting, is it? So it's just kind of,
Yeah,
will you bother? Like, if it's gonna, because like if you did dip into it again and it's like, right, still getting back pain from it, is it something you think you'd bother persisting with, or would you just continue to navigate around it? What do you think?
I think I'd always. So I suppose this is where I go back to the philosophy and go, where would I be? And go, well, A, she should be able to back squat.
Yeah.
But use it then as or can we? That'd be the skill acquisition piece of like, can we do a Anderson back squat? Right, let's just start with Anderson back squats. We'll deload you because it's only what you can produce concentrically, and just make sure everything's working there. So I'd keep it in there as like, again, that philosophy of movement literacy and going, well, you should be able to do it. Like
Yeah.
you're a healthier athlete if you can do that. I don't ever want to take. The goal is always to go back to the thing that causes the problem and have it not a problem. It's
Yeah.
just going wrong here. As you talked about with DeFranco going, no, you need a VO2 max. Like your weakness is over here. Like the weakness within the back squat is here, so we need this. We're just probably going to come away from it and build back towards it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where it will be in the program 100%.
Yeah.
Just it was actually training her to use her legs. She actually lifted with her back,
Right.
and the problem with her with her weightlifting program was because the weightlifting within the cycle she started top down, so she started with hangs, and as the program went on, it moved down to the floor, and like
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that principle. The problem is that she lifts off the floor with her back.
Yeah.
And then, so everything she was doing is she just made the back stronger, and then the back got overloaded, and then the back tapped out. Whereas actually getting her to do split squats, like absolutely murder her. Like a split squat murders a dead. Getting her to do a pause back squat kills her.
Yeah.
Absolutely kills her. She literally likes to speed in and speed out. She uses speed, take the speed away, and she's like gone.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
do you think that's a fairly typical strategy for a lot of, I'd say certainly for a lot of athletes that are certainly powerful, fast, and typically somewhat competent? And do you think that kind of, 'cause I suppose when it comes to skill acquisition, like you say, teaching that movement literacy, one of the methods I've typically gone to more often than not is let's go and do an isometric and hold that position and see how much control you can, you know, have in
yeah.
that position, in that situation, and then produce the force to get out of it. Um, is
I
that
think
typically?
with the isometric, like what you said there, spot on. What I also love about it is you can put them in that position and go, "What are you feeling?"
Yeah.
Because you should be like, "Oh, I feel my back." You're not feeling your legs,
Yeah.
but resisted. We're doing a resisted there. So I'm working you isometrically, and it should be with the legs. Why are you not feeling your legs? How are you doing it? So it's a
Yeah.
great way of being able to teach them then how to use. Well, are they pushing through the leg? Like, is it just as simple as are you pushing your feet into the floor? No, no, I'm just driving up into the bar.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're not having a relationship with the floor, that thing that we're stood on. I think
Genuinely.
it's a great way of getting people to understand like this is where force comes from.
Yeah. I would say like, so I think just going into my own kind of training a little bit, but one of the things I always struggled with was I was very, very much glute dominant. And then when it came to actually sprinting, running, cutting, changing direction, like I had a lot of pain in particular, sort of like through my patella tendons. I don't know whether it was like, I mean, this was like, I would say university when I was pretty much just taking training very seriously and a lot of
Mm.
demand, a lot of load. But my kind of strategy was always load up the glutes and the hips, and I would be fine. I would find a way through pretty much everything. Um, and then when it came to like actually continuously improving my squat, like my deadlift went flying way past, and I started to really, really struggle on my squat. So then I've gone back to like the isometrics and holding those squat positions. And like you're saying, in terms of being able to feel like a muscle is contracting, like one of the strategies I have used for that is like, in all seriousness, genuinely just giving them a slap, giving them a whack, waking them up, like go like, right, feel that there. I've also done it with a couple of clients. You just have to be very careful about
Yeah.
the hinge pattern. Slap them on the ass. Don't do that. Haven't done that. Don't worry. Um, but yeah, in terms of actually like feeling it, like can you feel it? Like whether it's people struggling to feel like calf or hamstring, quad, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, hold the position where you might where you need to be, and then give it a squeeze, give it a tap, like start to add some extra sensory stuff into the mix. And I felt like that's generally worked quite well as well.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Um, yeah, that's what's so good about them.
It's, it's,
I do
it's
love that.
and the thing is,
And
it's
that's what's made it simple. Whereas before, I'd go into the movement and I'd make it more. People wouldn't know what they would do. Like I get them to do the arms, so go, oh, I want to do the arms because I want to put more torque into the glute here. Whereas versus just going, okay, I want you to do this here and push here. Okay, now the glute's working, and now we're getting it stronger as well. Because it's also that whole piece of we were always going for the whole idea and premise was it was like load to explode. So it's
mm,
like our muscle must lengthen before it shortens.
yeah,
It's like, well, that is how muscle spindle fires, but a muscle spindle also fires based off muscle spindle also fires based off magnitude. So how much tension is there? So doing those body weight exercises, there probably wasn't enough magnitude. So therefore, it's like, yes, it's getting used to being lengthened and it can respond to that, but then the muscle belly isn't responding to the magnitude of force. So we were improving. I suppose I need to look into it more, but I suppose we were looking at it. Go the longer muscle lengths we're working at is then more the elastic component. So then we're potentially going: is it the elastic component lengthening, or is it even the fascial input? Is it fascial stretching and fascial
mm,
network? Because it was all like it was all designed off the trains
yeah,
and planes and everything like that. So is it effectively dynamic fascial stretching?
mm,
Like, yeah, read the book and then we'll talk over
yeah.
that.
Potentially both, potentially all of it. Like it's always more complex than you think in it. Like
Oh,
I remember starting out just going, oh well, I've got like some general pop clients coming in, like, oh my back's really sore. It's like, okay, it's probably not being caused by your back. Let's go and stretch out your hip flexors. It's like, well, and then you, I don't know, like there's certain things that I look back on now and I just think it certainly wasn't as simple as I fucking thought it was when I knew everything 5 years ago. And like you get to the
yeah.
point where you think, I don't know anything anymore. Like, what's even going on? Like, I know some of the conversations that I've had with you, I've kind of come out of the gym afterwards and I've gone, do I even know anything now? It's
Oh man.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Man, I literally, but that's where I mean, I was obviously part of, like I say, was teaching people, but I was teaching them one element, and I felt like I was literally just static. Like I wasn't see, there was more to see, and I didn't know it all enough. I just knew this one process very well, and like I'm actually massively motivated by my own personal development and learning. But yeah, like we talked, like what I said before, like, and that's the problem is the more we know, the less we
Mm.
know. Like with her back pain. So is it because the abs are on, or is it because we've taken the moment arm off the lower back? I don't know. All she cares about is she's pain free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what matters. And we can sit there and we can have the nerdy, fun conversations that we have now. Like that's the cool side of it. But we still don't know.
Yeah.
Like we think we know, but we don't,
No.
and we never. Yeah, we never will. Because the problem is everyone becomes the way science has to go is that person has to delve so deep into it, but all they see is, but then that's all they see.
Yeah.
So they treat everything with it like we love isometrics, but I don't want to do isometric research because I don't want to see that isometrics solve everything, and I don't want to do eccentric research because I don't want to think that it's like no, I can't do eccentric training the whole time with professional footballers that are playing 2 games a week, like you'll absolutely bury them into the ground.
Yeah.
Um, but you still need eccentric training, and it still has a place for someone, and that's the problem where we're at, isn't it? To fully understand one thing, you have to go all the way in. So somebody has to go all the way into that, but you never will.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I
link.
think that's definitely where I am. Yeah. I'm happy to just kind of read and see what other people are doing and go,
Yeah,
oh, I'll take a bit of that. I'll take a bit of that and try and bring
that
it all together.
100%. I mean, that's what I'd become. I remember reflecting on. I think I had a footballer come in, and his mum came in with him and was like, "Oh, I was going to send him to who his dad used to see." He's like, "Oh, he did the Paul Check stuff," and I was like, "Oh, Checky." And at that moment, like reflecting on that comment, I was like, "Hang on a minute, you might not be like he was a Checky, but you're a Grey Institute-y like
Mm.
effectively indirect Grey Institute disciple. Like I don't, yeah, like being attached to one thing, like is again that was then just a hammer analogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't just want to be a hammer.
Yeah. I think
So,
that is probably an appropriate and perfect way to end it. I've still got like a list of ton of questions. We might just have to make this a weekly thing. I don't know. I'll just record
mate,
this
you
every
know
time we're in
what?
the gym.
I probably can't like or
Yeah, yeah.
fortnight, man. Like just a nerd out. Like just this is what like I think I had a conversation with an athlete yesterday for 30 minutes. We had a conversation. So I think all told, I spoke for an hour. But like, just nerded out for an hour.
I remember. I
But
think I remember earlier in the week you were in the gym, and I think you were on your way out for about an hour. You were leaving an hour before you actually left.
well, you can't publish this now because like my wife will go. You say you've got no time. It's like stop fucking talking to people.
No, you were busy. You were very busy. Anyway, mate, really, really appreciate it. We'll definitely have to do this again. We'll get something sorted for relatively close in the near future. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to just drop your Instagram or where people can find you, where people can message you and get in touch.
So two handles that I'm not very active on. I've got somebody helping me out with it now. Um, James Jowsey Training and James Jowsey Performance on Instagram. Email James. That's a great question. James, no one sends emails anymore. Everyone just messages you through
Yeah,
Instagram.
yeah,
No,
no, just
uh,
Instagram DM. That's the best way to do it, isn't it?
do that. It takes me a while, but yeah, that is the
Yeah,
best way to do it.
no, it's wicked. Right. Well, really appreciate you coming on, and I will let you get rolling, and I'll chat to you at some point either later on this week or next week, mate.
Cheers, Lenko.
Nice one. Cheers. Right, guys, thank you very, very much for listening. Hopefully, you've enjoyed my chat with Jowsey there. I'll definitely be getting him on for another chit chat again later on because like I said to him, I've still got a list of about 20 questions and 20 things that I want to talk through with him. It's always the same whenever we're in the gym. We end up doing nothing and just chit chatting and not really training by that point, even though we are busy. Anyway, thank you very, very much for listening. Make sure you tune in again in the future for the next episode. That concludes us for episode 121. I'll be back again soon. See you next week.